Recording. So good evening, everyone, and welcome. I know you're starting the SQL module tonight. So my name is Ahmed Al-Duwani. I'm with AI Core. Today, I'll be kind of your facilitator for this module. What we'll be doing is the hands-on demo to demonstrate how we can download and set up the tools required to do the SQL lessons on a Linux system. So my understanding is we all should be having a Linux system. Please let me know if the case is otherwise. Windows is easy to set up, but having a demo on Linux could be useful for those who are not too familiar with the system, because a lot of it is command line based, and it involves just like combining some components together. So just high level, does anyone have experience using SQL before, or is this your first time interacting with it?
First time.
First time, okay. Anybody else?
First time for me.
First time.
First time.
Okay, so maybe it'll be helpful to kind of quickly go over what is SQL and why we're doing this briefly, and why it's useful. So SQL, again, it's data manipulation scripting language. In SQL, we interact with data that's called structured data stored in rows and columns. The tool we use is a database. In this case, it's Postgres database. This is an open source technology. It's been around for a long time. So SQL is not new. It's been used for over 20 years now in the world of data engineering. The evolution that's been happening is more on the big data side of things. We'll get into that in future lessons and modules. But at a high level, the idea is for SQL is how to capture, store structured data. By structured, we mean data that could be stored in rows and columns. And then using this data in companies to do analytics work. So I'll give an example. So for instance, imagine you are a famous supermarket chain like Walmart in the US. You have sales every day going into your database, and all the managers and the top business executives, they want to kind of take a look at, how many sales did we do today? What is the dollar value for all the sales by store, by city, by region? Can we look at sales managers? How many sales did they have? And this is called slicing and dicing, by you going through different dimensions or different parts of the data and doing sums, aggregates, averages, calculations to kind of get a better understanding of how the business is performing, right? So that's high level, just an example of the type of structured data and why we use a database. Can we store these data as files? Yes, we can. You can have all this information stored in separate files in a folder in a server. But good luck trying to analyze that, combining them together and trying to make sense out of it, right? The whole idea for a database is to make that task easier and to kind of keep that data stored over time. So every day goes by, you have growing data every week, every month. And the more data you have, the more accurate you can do analytics and you can do calculations, right? And that also helps us to do predictive models in data science. When you have previous behavior and you have previous data, you can use that to predict future. So for example, when in holiday season, every year sales increase by 50%, it will help you predict in the future to manage your inventory, for example, for new products, right? So that being said, this is just high level theoretical overview. Today is a hands-on demo. So I'll share my screen. I'll be doing step-by-step walkthrough of the notebook. So I would encourage everyone to please open your notebooks on the SQL module. We're going through the first lesson, which is called SQL or SQL Setup on the Linux system. If you have a Windows system, the steps are easier and there are a separate set of instructions there, or Mac users. And if there are any issues, please let me know. But for now, we're assuming everyone's on Linux, and the demo we'll be doing is for the Linux as well. Any questions so far?
Yes, sorry, just a question. Is this notebook you mentioned the one?
No questions? All right. Please, if someone is not talking, if you could put your mics on mute, I'd appreciate that very much.
So I had a question. Which module did you say to go on to? Because it's all mine a lot to be on at.
I'm having trouble hearing you, but you're asking about the module?
Yeah, you said going on to the notebook to see the notes, but I thought that they're on each lesson that gets unlocked as you progress through the course.
Well, the first lesson is just the setup. So today we're basically.
I thought it was the SQL lesson. Okay, my mistake. Ignore
that. Yeah, this is the SQL lesson. Yes, we're setting up Postgres and pgAdmin4 for the SQL lesson.
Okay.
We're going to use that. So we're setting up the tool you will use to import the data and do the calculations and the scripting on the data with, right? Okay, I see a question from Kaimors.
Yes, sorry. So the notebook that you have opened, is this the one that would be available to us if we get to the stage, or is it a full notebook?
So you don't have access yet? This is the lesson, actually.
No, because I'm still in the November cohort and we haven't gotten here yet.
I see.
Maybe
okay.
But we were told that this would be a good sort of thing to listen to. So
sure, yeah, feel free to listen in. This is the SQL setup lesson, right? When you click the notebook here, it will open this notebook that I had on the other tab.
I think you can share the Google Lab link into the chat. Okay, yeah, someone already shared it, and everyone can have their own
Oh, brilliant! Thank you.
So you can follow the instructions there. Yes, thank you, Pascal.
Thanks.
All right, so let's get started. If you have questions, please let me know. I have this open on another screen, so I'll minimize it so I don't confuse everyone, and we'll go here. So question, first of all, is everyone on Linux? If it's a no, please raise your hand. Otherwise, we're assuming you're on Linux and you can follow the steps. Anybody not on Linux?
I'm not on Linux, not right this second.
Ewan, okay. Which system do you have?
I've got Windows, but I have Ubuntu installed. I'm just not on it right now.
So you have Ubuntu installed on a VM or dual boot?
On say that again. On what?
Do you have Ubuntu on a virtual machine, or is it a separate system on the computer? When you're booting, you select Linux.
Yes, it's the second one.
Okay. So if you want, you can open your computer on Linux. Otherwise, for the SQL or SQL, whichever you prefer to pronounce it, you can do it on Windows. But for more advanced courses and modules we're getting into, you will have problems with Windows system. Trust me, I've been there a lot, especially when we get into more advanced big data technologies like Hadoop and Spark and Kafka. There will be a lot of problems with Windows. But for SQL, it's a mature technology, it will work fine. So you can proceed. However, the instructions will be slightly different. You can still see them on the notebook. They have separate steps for Windows. So these are for Linux. This one above is for Windows and Mac. It's more graphical user interface, so it's easier. So Sagal, you're also on Windows?
I've got a Mac.
Mac, okay.
Yeah.
So the instructions here should be similar for you, I'm guessing, as well. All right. So more or less, guys, the differences will not be huge, but just to standardize, we're trying to use Linux as much as possible. So first of all, quick overview in case we're not familiar with Linux. This is the terminal screen. We open it by clicking the menu on the left. It says terminal. This is basically like how we have a terminal in Mac, or we have the command prompt in Windows. We can type commands like ls shows us the files, pwd shows the directory I'm currently in, clear resets the screen, makes it look nice and pretty. Okay, so now the steps we need to download Postgres. So first of all, we need to download the actual pgAdmin package. Okay, So to do that, we use a curl command. In Linux, that's how we grab kind of packages and download from the internet. HTTPS pgAdmin4 static packages pgAdmin4.pub, and then we leave. Pipe in Linux is when you add multiple commands to one. Sudo stands for super user do, in case you're not familiar. Apt add minus. So what this is doing now is downloading pgAdmin packages. This pgAdmin we're going to use along with Postgres to do our scripting. pgAdmin is the graphical user interface kind of that we're going to be using. Postgres is the backend database. Okay. Passwords is okay. So that step is completed. I'll just copy. It's easier because it'll take time to do all these. So we finished the first step here. Now we're in step number 2. We downloaded the package. Now in Linux, everything we download, we need to add to something called the repository. Oops. So to do that, I will copy this text. Copy. Oh, whoops. Don't copy the whole page, which is not what I want. Okay, copy that. We'll bring it to the terminal. Let's clear all that. Something got screwed up in my terminal. Let me close it. Open another one. Yeah, looks good. So we'll paste that command that we just copied. What this is doing is basically it's adding Postgres, SQL, and pgAdmin4 to our list of sources in Linux. Asking for my password. We always have a password in Linux. Okay, done. In Linux, it doesn't say if something's successful, it'll just complain if it's not successful. Next, we need to install pgAdmin4 using the command sudo apt update. So sudo apt update and sudo apt upgrade. What this does is it updates and upgrades all the Linux packages that we have. This is kind of like when we use Windows Update to get the new versions of software. Yeah. Okay. So it updated. Let's clear the screen, make it look nice and pretty. Now we're going to install pgAdmin4 itself. pgAdmin4 is the actual user interface that we'll be using to connect to the database. Okay. So we need 2 parts, again, just to re-emphasize. Postgres is the SQL database in the back end. pgAdmin4 is the front end graphical user interface that we'll be using to write the script, SQL scripts, like select queries, for example. Okay. So the next command is sudo apt install pgAdmin4. It might complain because I already downloaded it before the demo, just to save time, because this is big. But let's see. Yeah, here it's saying it's already the newest version, if you can see. But if you're doing it for the first time, it might take 5 to 10 minutes to download. But for the sake of saving your time today, I already set that up. The next command we will need is to start working on Postgres. Whoops. To start working on Postgres, which is here. We need to get this package. Sudo apt install wget curl certificates. So we will run that command. Next. S is missing. There you go. Okay, looks good, no complaints. Now we need to add it. So similar to how we added pgAdmin to our repository, we now need to add Postgres that we just downloaded to our repository as well. We will use this command. Okay, no complaints means everything is good so far. I'll clear just to get to the top of the screen. So now we're on step number 7 here, in case you are following. We'll do sudo apt update again, and then we'll install Postgres itself in the following step. So sudo apt update. So this is updating our repo. Now, when it says in Linux, when we say sudo apt get install, we're actually installing a software. So in this case, we're installing PostgreSQL, which is the backend database that we will be using. So paste that here. Okay. Normally, it will take a few minutes. I already installed it beforehand. That's why it's saying in this line, if you can see, it's already the newest version, right? If you had an older version, it would upgrade it. If it was not there, it would download it. But since for this demo, I prepared it in advance, it's already there. If you're running these commands in parallel with the steps we're following, it'll take a few minutes for that to download as well. Okay. So now we have everything downloaded. The next step is we need to set up and connect the different parts together so we can start using the system, right? One thing we can do is to use this command system control status to see if PostgreSQL is working correctly. And we have a nice screenshot to show us the expected output. It should look like this. So we will test that the download installation was successful. Yep, here we can see that it's starting. Postgres RDBMS success. So things look good. RDBMS is an acronym for Relational Database Management System, right? The SQL system. So that looks good. Break that. Perfect. So step 10. Now we need to establish a connection with Postgres database. So we'll need to start working on the Postgres database itself. So what sudo su minus Postgres, we're actually starting the database service now. Okay. Sudo su minus Postgres. Here, notice the change in the terminal from this line, which has my name on it, to Postgres, the blinking cursor. Now we've switched to the terminal for the database system, Postgres database, right? And we can do database related activities. So from this terminal, for example, we can create tables, create a database, delete something, add users, etc. So PSQL, we'll get into the SQL scripts. Here we go. Now we can start typing our SQL scripts. Yeah, here we're just checking to see everything's working fine. So now we're looking for the username. This thing keeps, every time I click on it. Sorry about that. It's not protected. Let's go back to the main terminal and then exit. So now we need to create a password, right? So any sudo command we write has to be from the external terminal. So now we've just checked that everything's working fine. We're on track. So we need to exit this here, exit the second. So we were 2 layers inside, if you noticed. The \q exits from Postgres script, SQL script, then the manager, and now we're back in the Linux terminal. So here, what we need to do is to set up a password. So we'll use this command, sudo password Postgres. Sudo again is super user do. It's like the administrator account in Windows. Password, Postgres. It asks for a new password. I'll put in something simple we can remember, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Retype 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And great, we've updated the password. So far, we are on track. Everything looks good. Now we need to create a password for the Postgres user. So this user will be the database account, okay? And then inside the Postgres, run this. So we'll do su minus Postgres. There's space or no space? Password. Okay. So far looks good. I know it might seem a bit confusing, but we'll see how all these connect in a few steps. So don't worry about that. Then let's create a password. Run this command, exit by running exit. Okay, so we need to run this command. Here. I think you copied the whole thing again. Yep. PSQL -C user. Need to copy that. So instead of this, we'll just put our password that we had before. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. So what are we doing here? We're using SQL commands from PostgreSQL to alter the user Postgres. So we have a user account under the name of Postgres. We're altering the kind of the role permissions, right? And we're assigning it the password 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is a confirmation that it ran successfully, alter role, okay? So basically this is all just setting up. Next step is we need to exit Postgres and then do another restart. So we can kind of start using the system. We're close to using the system. Someone had a question? No? Okay. Thought I heard something there. So we'll leave that here. Now we're just doing a system control restart for the Postgres server so that it loads with the new settings and the new password that we've been working with and that we created. Perfect. All right. So now we've configured the backend database. All these steps, I know it might seem a bit confusing, but we've configured the backend database. The next step is we need to run the interface, the graphical user interface called pgAdmin4, which we will use a browser for, okay? So to do that, we run this command, super user do, user pgAdmin bin web setup .shell script. Okay, so this comes in with the shell script. And it allows us to run it from the terminal, like so. Now what it's doing is it's setting up pgAdmin4 in web mode on a Debian-based platform on the Linux. Do you wish to continue? Yes. Do you wish to restart the Apache server? Yes. Okay. So now it's configured pgAdmin4 on this link, which we will use now to start exploring the system. If this is the first time you set it up, it will ask you for an email address and a password. So please provide those. I already set up before class to save time, but you're going to use those to sign in to this link, okay? So 127.0.0.1, that's localhost. It's the IP for your local machine. If you're in a large company working on multiple servers, the IP could be something else, right? It's not a problem. So now that that's set up and configured, the next step, we're finally going to start using some graphical user interface. So instead of the terminal, we can click on this link here, pgAdmin4, and it will load the pgAdmin graphical user interface that we will use to interact with the Postgres database in the back end. Okay. Email address and password. We should have set it up in the previous step here, right? In my case, I did that earlier today, so it's saved. This is my Gmail, my password, and we can log in. Okay, so finally, we have something to look at besides the black terminal. This is the main tool we'll be using for our SQL work for the module. And here we can see we have a dashboard with some menu items, and we have servers over here with databases and tables. When we create this for the first time, you will not have any servers available or any tables. The way we would create them, again, it's in the notebook. After we log in, it will show us here. So to create a database, click on new server and add a name for your server. So let's create one now and see how that could be done. First, we'll right click on this servers icon on the top left corner of our screen. We can create a new server, give it any name we like. We can call this one October 21 for the cohort's name. Okay. Next, we need to add some configuration properties. So in the connection, which is this second tab, in the host, we can put localhost. Username, we'll have something default there from our email. We should put Postgres, which is the account we created a few steps ago in the Linux terminal. Okay, I believe that's all we need for this one. Our username Postgres. Okay, we save. I'm able to connect. No password supplied. Yep. 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so now we have a server and it has databases beneath it, but it's empty. Should be empty. Or maybe it's reading from the other one. Well, ideally, if it's the first time, you will not have a database here, and we'll have to create one. So let me delete this one. Then we can create it again to see the steps. Refresh. Error. Okay. Doesn't want to delete it now. All right, well, let's assume it's not there. I'll show you how we can create it and then how to import the files that we need. So after creating a server, the next step is we need to create a database. So the structure in SQL is you have a server, high level. Within that server, you have a database. Within the database, we have tables. Make sense? It's a hierarchy. So first we create the server, then we create the database, then we create tables. Of course, you can have more than one database, you can have more than one table, right? So if we're creating a new database, it'll give us a new menu. We can call it October 21 Agila database, for example. What other properties does it need? It doesn't say here, but yeah, we'll need to add, I don't think we need to add much. This is the SQL statement it's going to use. Creates it automatically for us. Owner Postgres, save. So we'll create that database. Okay, we see the green tick on the bottom right, success. The database is completed and connected, right? Now, we have some things here. Don't worry about that now. But we have a database but we do not have any data, right? This is blank. We're starting from scratch. We're creating a new server, a new database, but we do not have data. So in the notebook, it provides us with a link at the top under prerequisites, which mentions that we should download the file from this data set here. If you click this link, it will open a file called pgAdmin4. Yep. So we need to download that, save it somewhere, and use this as the data for our database tables. All right. I already downloaded that, so I will click cancel here. But in your case, if it's the first time, you should download it, put it in a folder, and then we will import that into the database. And I will demonstrate how to do that now. Okay, yeah, I was just looking at the chat. I noticed someone had questions. Yeah, feel free to ask me if you have any questions, guys. Don't worry about interrupting. So back here, so how do we add data to a database? That's the next step. To do that, you pick the database name with the left mouse button and then click the right mouse button. We need something called restore. This feature allows us to import data. Okay. Click restore. It will open a new menu box. Under file name, on the right, we have those 3 dots. Okay. It will open up folders structure. And if you download the file in the proper location to make it faster, which I did for the lesson, it should be there. This pgAdmin4. Select that file, click restore, and it should take a few seconds. It is now running. What it's doing is it's taking all the data from the file, putting it into the database in the proper structure. What we'll end up with is multiple tables, each table containing rows and columns and data, right? And we'll take a look at these together. So successfully completed operation, which is good. Green tick is always nice. Now, how do we find that data? It's a bit strange, but usually it's under schemas. We'll have something called tables, and voila. You'll see here 21 tables. We just imported from that one file. Actor, address, category, city, country, film. So this is a film database that we will use throughout the module that contains different information. So if we want to explore what the data looks like and what the tables look like, you can kind of click on the arrows here, see the different columns. So for this actor table, for example, we'll see that we have 4 columns or fields: actor ID, first name, and last update. If we open the address table below it, we'll see that it has a larger number of columns: address ID, address 2, district, city ID, postal code, phone, and last update. All right. So great, but how do we see the data? It doesn't tell me much. This is the structure or the metadata, but how do we see the actual data? We'll need to start writing SQL queries, which is what the module is all about. To do that, we click on this tool, which looks like a database. It's called the query tool. And it will open a notebook-like interface here, which we can then use to write our commands, right? So for SQL, if we want to take a look at what the data looks like in the actor table, for example, we can do select star. Star means all records from table actor, and that's it. We just no filters, nothing. Semicolon helps to end the command, and then we can run that to see the output. We'll see it in the bottom here. And there we go. You can see every single record that's stored in that table. And here are the 4 columns that we discussed: actor ID, first name, last name, and the timestamp, last update. And this is the data. So when we say structured data, it's in rows and columns. It's usually organized in this manner. right? And we used different commands, SQL commands. So select is the most basic command. Select just, it's like, if you've done any coding, it's like print, for example, in Java or Python, or show. It basically just gives us all the information that's there in a format we can see visually. We can do a lot of tips and tricks with SQL. We'll see that throughout the lesson. It's a little bit out of our scope. Today is just mainly the setup and showing everyone how we can download a Postgres database, which is in the back end, storing all this data for us. How to download and configure pgAdmin4, which is this front end graphical user interface. How we can connect them, how to log in, and how we can import the data so we can start writing our scripts, right? With that being said, thank you for your time. We went a few minutes overboard. It's supposed to be 30 minutes, but that will conclude today's demo. And please feel free to ask any questions you have, and I will stop recording now. So thank you everyone for your time.
Thank you, Ahmed.
Any
Thanks, Ahmed.
questions? Thank you.
Thanks, Ahmed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, feel free to have any questions, guys. We can spend a few minutes if you're following the steps, if it's still downloading or you have any bugs, I'll be more than happy to support.